Hey everybody, welcome to ComFest Saturday 2016. We had a great day yesterday and today looks like it's going to be super. A lot of you probably think you're equal and you might be at ComFest. But out there in the real world, if you're of the female persuasion, you just might not be as equal as you think. And here to talk to us about it today are the people from Progress, Ohio, who support our progressive end of the Democratic Party. And so I'm welcoming Sandy Tice and friends from Progress, Ohio.
Thanks everybody for coming. As she said, I'm Sandy Tice. I'm the Executive Director at Progress, Ohio. And Progress, Ohio is the state's largest advocacy organization for progressives. And we believe that anybody who wants an opportunity to succeed should have an opportunity to succeed. And unfortunately, the people who are in charge of our state don't believe that. I've grown up in Ohio. I like Ohio. And I think sometimes if you're not from here, you have a bad impression of us. Ohio's given the world light, flight, flat-rolled steel, Superman, soap that floats, the gas mask, the golf ball, rubber, LeBron James, John Glenn, Toni Morrison, and lots of other famous things. Right now, our state is leading the nation in some really bad indices. We're the third hungriest state in America. And when John Kasich took office, since he's taken office, unemployment has gone down, but poverty among children has gone up. And that's because there are too many people who are working full-time who can't climb out of poverty. So we're going to talk to you about some of these indices, and then we're going to talk to you about what you can do to help us turn around Ohio, particularly making it better for women. Thank you. This is my colleague Tiff Wolf. We met on Jennifer Brunner's Senate campaign, and I love her. She's a badass, and she's helping us organize.
Hi. Ohio is a fantastic state. I am a transplant here. I decided to marry, have a kid, raise her here. I've become pretty concerned because I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years, and I started working with Sandy and the folks at Progress, Ohio, and realized that things were not going quite the way that I had hoped. I'm looking at some statistics. Ohio has, and I'm going to make sure that I reference my cheat sheet a little bit because some of these I want to be really accurate on, because they're absolutely terrifying. Almost 1 in 4 Ohio children live in poverty. That is a staggering statistic. Ohio's infant mortality rate is 45th in the country. You have a better chance of making it to your first birthday in a country like Iraq than you do in Ohio for various reasons, and we'll get into a little bit of that and then talk a lot about what we can do. Ohio's Black infant mortality rate is the worst in the country, and when I gave that statistic to somebody the other day, they said worse than Mississippi. Yeah, worse than Mississippi.
The Mississippi of the North.
Right. And we've been worse than, in infant mortality, we've been worse for the past 7 years than the national average. That's not, there's some good things going on, and we'll tell you about that in just a minute too. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about hunger. Nearly 1 in 4 of Ohio's children has food insecurity. That's terrifying. That means that at any given time, a child in Ohio can't access good, nutritious food, or everybody in the family can't access good, nutritious food. Jobs and wages. 6 years after the last recession, Ohio has still not regained the jobs that it lost before, at the beginning of the recession. Sinking wages. Our gender gap in wages, it's still $3.30. Men earn $3.30 more an hour than women. It's shrinking, and that sounds good until you realize that it's shrinking because men's wages have been falling, not because women's wages are going up. And a lot of new jobs we hear all the time about all these new jobs that are coming about. Well, a lot of the new jobs are low-wage jobs that you can't raise a family on. So, and 66% of women, 2/3 of all low-wage workers are women. So those are a couple of things that we want to talk about, but also I want to get Sandy talking about education in Ohio. We were 5th in the nation. We are now 23rd, and that has happened in the past 6 years, and Sandy's got some really good information on why that's happened.
That happened because of some policy changes that the Kasich administration has made. Ohio's a swing state, so we should have pretty much even numbers of Democratic-leaning districts and Republican-leaning districts. And instead, because our state's so badly gerrymandered, 2/3 of the legislative districts were specifically drawn to benefit Republicans. So they control everything in a swing state, which is just really sad. Tiff mentioned that we're third in hunger. We can tie that directly to some policies of the administration. The Kasich administration had the authority to ask the federal government for emergency food waivers. They asked for them in Appalachian counties where a lot of white people live. They didn't ask for them in urban counties where a lot of black people live. They made a concerted effort to strategically decide who to get the food assistance for. And we all know that black voters are one of the most important bloc for Democrats, so they've done some things to punish people. They also started a program they put in the budget called Healthy, is it called Healthy Ohio, Sam? Healthy Ohio? Okay, Healthy Ohio. It should be called Unhealthy Ohio because it requires the state of Ohio to ask the federal government for waivers. So if you're on public assistance, you have to pay a copay, and if you miss your copay, you have to pay a fine. There have been studies that prove that these type of things that they do prevent more people from qualifying for jumping through the hoops needed to get the public assistance.
Right, because it's hard enough when you're poor to get to a doctor. You have all of the things going against you. You can't necessarily get to a doctor. If you're likely to go, and you're certainly not likely to go if you're already poor and then you have to pay in to go. It's just going to keep you from getting preventative health care, which down the line costs us all more because then you have to take care of the sicknesses that come from not having the preventative health care.
And we know from history and from academic studies that the more education you have, the better education you have, the more money you're likely to make. Yes. And what Ohio has done under these people is they have rewarded chronically failing charter schools. We are a national joke. There was a pro-charter school conference that called Ohio the Wild, Wild West of charter schools. Why do we keep pumping money into them? Well, the most chronically failing chains, White Hat Management and ECOT, the Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow, have given over $6.4 million to Republican candidates and causes. I think of that total, about 50,000 went to Democrats. So the pro-family, pro-child, pro-education crowd continues to undercut traditional public schools and send money to chronically failing charter schools. And that's hurting our kids, it's hurting their ability to graduate from high school, hurting their ability to get into a decent college. And those are all fights that Progress Ohio is fighting. And despite the fact that the knuckleheads are in charge of our General Assembly, we have some really good legislators. Many of them are women, Democratic legislators, and Tiff's going to tell you a little bit about some of the legislation that they have pending. Some of it's actually moving, and then we're going to see if we can get your help to help us fight this fight.
I want to give a couple more because I'm just looking at my cheat sheet here, and I'm constantly amazed by these statistics. Sandy's talking about the charter schools. 292 Ohio charter schools have received federal funding through Ohio grants. 108 of those closed or never opened. 26 that never opened didn't return the funds at all.
No one's even tried to get the money.
Right.
There's not even a mechanism to collect it. We have the second highest amount of this federal charter school money than any other state. And when we got the largest block in the last go-round, the people on the conference call, the reporters on the conference call just said, how the hell did Ohio, they stink so bad, how did Ohio's, that is home to some of the worst schools, get the most amount of money? It's become a big news story. Progress Ohio is helping fan those flames of discontent. They put our money on hold. And Sherrod Brown, our senator, who always is on the right side of the issues, he sent a letter to the federal government and said, how did this happen? What are you going to do to make sure next time you're doling it out, it actually goes to the good schools? And then he's asked a bunch of other questions. So that's on hold. But I look at if we had all the money that we send to the bad charter schools, and if we could direct that to the good charters and to the traditional schools. A lot of parents put their kids in charter schools because they have to walk through an unsafe region to get to their neighborhood school. Why can't we transfer that money from the bad charters and use it for safety zones for our traditional public schools?
This is an interesting statistic too, and Sandy was talking about if a kid has a disadvantage starting in life, like being impoverished, only 4% of Ohio's low-income 4-year-olds go to a publicly funded pre-K, whereas 29% of the nations do. That is such an advantage for a kid who may be living in poverty to be able to go to school and get that start in life and 4%. I think that that's just an outrageous number. I wanted to talk a little bit too, before I get into some of the good legislation, about where our money's going. And Sandy can talk about this. Tax breaks for businesses, that, as the statistic that I told you, we haven't even made up the jobs that were lost at the beginning of the recession yet. It's not as if these tax breaks for businesses are translating immediately into good paying jobs for our citizens. And very interesting, $9 billion in 2017 on tax breaks. And that is the same amount as all of Ohio's K-12 education. Yeah, I know, and I hate to keep referring to it, but these statistics are just staggering. I think that a lot of us know that there are issues, but it just really brings it home when you see exactly how much money is being spent and where. And even Kasich tried to eliminate some of these tax expenditures, and the legislature ignores the proposals. So they're pretty hardcore embedded. I don't. What's the proper word? Like entrenched with these tax breaks.
Every tax break has a special interest and a lobbyist behind it. They don't get in the budget by accident. Somebody's in there pimping for them, paying for them, and once they're in there, they're really difficult to get out.
Well, they're not getting reviewed either, which is terrifying. So if it's not working, nobody is telling them that it's not working because nobody's reviewing it. Okay. And then I want to talk a little bit about reproductive choice restrictions. And this is huge, no matter where, and we talk about this all the time, no matter where you stand on particularly the abortion issue, that seems to be where everybody draws this fine line. Reproductive health is more than abortion, but we have to have access to the full range of all reproductive health. We're not getting good information, as we know kids are not getting, there's a lot of abstinence-only kind of education, which we know doesn't work. Since Kasich has been in office, there have been 17 anti-choice bills, provisions taking effect. It winds up affecting us all. I wanted to talk a little bit too about some of the, and you may not know this, the legislature has kept rape crisis centers from talking to victims about abortion as one of the possible options. If a victim is in a situation like that, that person needs to have the full range of options. Require ultrasounds before any abortion, even if it's unnecessary. So basically they're telling doctors to do an unnecessary medical procedure. I can't imagine as a doctor being told to do something that you know is not effective and not needed. It horrifies me as just a regular citizen. I can't imagine when you're trying to take care of somebody who's in a situation that they probably don't want to be in, that before they can do anything they have to have an ultrasound. It's just a restriction with, there's no excuse for it, just to make it harder.
Keep in mind, this is the crowd that wants to limit government spending, requiring an unnecessary medical procedure that costs money. And all these restrictions are intended to make it more difficult for a woman to access an abortion, whether it's jacking up the cost or closing down the clinics. More than half the clinics in Ohio have closed under John Kasich, which just is astonishing to me in a state with as a robust of a medical economy as Ohio, that we are telling doctors what to do. You can see there's some posters on the wall here from Dr. John Kasich, gynotician. We love Dr. John. He has his own Facebook page. We make fun of him on some of these things, but the real John Kasich is kind of more scary than the guy on the banners. So check out his page, ask him questions, he'll probably answer you back, and it's probably kind of as ridiculous as the stuff that he normally says.
Currently, 91% of Ohio's 88 counties don't have an abortion provider. Just let that sink in for a minute. So if you're a person who needs this care, you've chosen to take this legal step, it's pretty highly likely that you can't access the health care that you want. So you need to keep that in mind. I'd like to talk a little bit, because that's all terrifying and awful, but there is actually some good legislation out there. There is a bipartisan bill right now that has been introduced by all 7 of the women members of the Senate. Republicans and Democrats working together. It's the Pregnancy Accommodation Bill. As you know, that there's the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. It doesn't go far enough. So 12 different states have enacted these pregnancy accommodations. It's pretty simple, reasonable stuff. Like you might need an extra bathroom break. You might need to sit down at work. And I want to emphasize again, this is bipartisan legislation. This is pretty easy and it's not going anywhere right now. We have a petition that you can sign and you can get everybody you know to sign. This would be a huge victory. We can ease these legislators into something that works with people of the state, as opposed to tax breaks or trying to further erode our reproductive health care choices. There's another one that is getting huge. Everywhere we go with this petition, everybody's excited about it. It's paid leave. We are the only industrialized nation that doesn't have any kind of paid leave right now. Only 4% of Ohio's employees have any kind of paid leave. And that is if you get sick, if your partner gets sick, if you adopt, if you have a kid, if you want to take care of your parents. Everybody in here is going to have one of those things happen at some point. The fact that you could absolutely completely jeopardize the economic health of yourself at the same time that something like this is happening in your family is terrifying. And this is a great thing. The first thing that anybody will say to you is, well, that's another big government kind of deal. How are we going to pay for that? You take a little bit out of each paycheck. It costs each employee between $25 and $50 a year, and then you can have up to 12 weeks of paid leave. This is something.
How many moms do we have in the audience? Did you guys get paid leave when you left?
You're lucky.
In a different country.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Postbacks at OSU are allowed 0 leave.
Yeah.
Wow.
0.
It's terrifying. And you think about it, have this conversation with your friends, because you think about it for yourself. My little girl was a 2-pound preemie. She came at 28 and a half weeks. She was in the hospital for 9 and a half weeks. Thank God my husband had good insurance. I didn't have any kind of paid leave. He didn't have any kind of paid leave, but he did have good insurance. So think about $420,000 when you're trying. You're trying to pay off your student loans. You're trying to start a life. You're anywhere in your life. Even a super rich person, $420,000 is just a staggering amount. And then add on top of that you don't have any kind of paid leave. So this is the kind of thing that we would like you guys to get behind. This legislation has already been proposed. We need to tell the legislators, this is a no-brainer. I'm at these festivals all the time, and no matter who you talk to on where they are on the political aisle, anywhere, everybody wants to be able to take care of somebody they care about or themselves, or bond with their kid. I mean, I can't imagine once Gus got out of the hospital not being able to spend some time with her too. So that's some really good legislation that we have a petition online. That's just at progressohio.org. Go to the website, please join us. Give us your email. We can keep you up to date on all the different things that we're working on. It's one of the things that we would really like you to do. Sam, is there any other legislation that you'd like us to talk about particularly? Those two, we feel like if we can ease the legislators in, these are two that we know that everybody could get behind. I mean, there's also like an increase in minimum wage, which would help to bring some of these impoverished Ohioans out of poverty. Might have to work a little harder for that one because some of the small businesses really feel like that's going to take them out of the running of making some money. But the two that we talked about, I'm feeling very passionate about because I think that those are easy. And it would be a great, easy win for everybody.
There's some other things that you guys can do too. I was a State House reporter for 25 years. Last 12 I was at the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And newspapers don't have the clout that they used to have, but local politicians are still terrified of their local paper. And one of the most well-read things in the newspaper is the letters to the editor. And when the bottom started to fall out of the newspaper industry, I kept getting dispatched to the home office to listen to a presentation called the Readership Survey. And they would ask people what they read in the newspaper. And the best read thing is always the letters to the editor. If your local state rep or your local state senator is on the wrong side or the right side, send a letter to your local newspaper, mention them by name because they read those and it really annoys them if you mention them by name and you're disagreeing with them, and make a specific ask. All the big papers and some of the medium-sized and smaller ones, if you Google Columbus Dispatch and letters to the editor or Cleveland Plain Dealer and letters to the editor, you will get a form and you can file it electronically. They would rather they arrive electronically, because then they don't have to pay somebody to type them in. Every newspaper has a specific word limit that they recommend, although sometimes they will let you get away with something a little bit longer. Try to stick to the word limit, and they will ask you for your name, your phone number, your address. They won't print your phone number or your address, they'll print the city that you're from. And most papers prefer letters to the editor from people in their geographic region. If you have a title, if you're the head of an organization, if you're part of a trade association that's in the news, use the title in there, because that gives you a bigger hat to wear and increases your chance of getting printed. But please do it. It's amazing. And a lot of the contracts that we have to help with these progressive issues, some of the deliverables they want from us is letters to the editor, because they know how powerful those are and how well read they are. The other thing you can do is pick up the phone and call them. You pay their salary, you pay for their benefits, you pay for their offices, and they're supposed to listen to you. Most of them don't, but that's a big deal. We know that all the issues that we care about are going to be a lot easier to fix once the new legislative map takes over, I think in 7 years, so I'll be in my drooling years, but hopefully some of you folks will be okay. We made gerrymandering reform a big issue last year at Progress Ohio, and we pretty much did it for nothing. There was a campaign that was dysfunctional, and we felt so strongly about it that we thought we would have to fight that fight. We worked with our social media people at Democratic Voices to run pretty much a social media campaign, and it was interesting to me how much support we got from traditional Republican allies like the business community. We put out a statement with our right-wing counterpart, Opportunity Ohio, about the need for redistricting reform, and 3 of the main business groups in Ohio called me and they said, thank you, these people are venal, they don't listen, they're stupid, they don't have the right priorities. And I said, call them up and tell them that. You're preaching to the choir here, and then call me back and tell me what they said. 2 of them called back. They said they didn't call them any names, but they made it perfectly clear that the priorities that they are doing are not the priorities that the business community wants, the job creators want. So we have an opportunity. These guys have gone so far over the top that the Democrats and the Republicans are mad. The faith leaders are really engaged, the religious left and the religious right. The left is helping us with the pregnancy accommodation bill, but the right's helping us with payday lending reform. If you guys were around here in 2008, Ohio did a referendum on some very good pro-consumer laws that capped payday lending interest rates at 28%. Well, the thieves in the industry found a loophole, they slithered through, and now the interest rates are even higher than they were when we capped them in 2008. Rich Cordray, who runs the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in Washington, is trying to do new national rules. He used to be the Attorney General of Ohio. He's a 5-time Jeopardy champion, very smart, so he understands all this. Give Rich's office a call, send him an email. We have a petition urging that will allow you to directly contact Rich Cordray's office. The payday lenders have vowed to do 100,000 personal letters to Rich Cordray's office, trying to keep those interest rates high. If you can't make money at 28%, then you need a new business.
I wanted to add one more thing. If you need any help with any of this stuff that we've talked about, contact Progress Ohio. We will always help. We can help you with the letters to the editor. We can help you if you have trouble finding an address that you're looking for. We have all kinds of resources, and we want to make sure that your voices are heard because, as you know, Progress Ohio is representing a lot of folks who don't always get heard, and we want you to get heard.
And we're happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Gnats.
I know, they're really annoying.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. This paid medical leave for pregnancy or caring for a person, does that mean wait people, bartenders, everybody who has a job? Or just government workers like you do?
No, it's employers under a certain size, right? You have to have less than 25 employees, I think, for that to kick in. It's not perfect.
Right.
Right, more than 25.
I mean, more than 25,
More
sorry.
than 25 employees.
Gotcha. Okay, so that would be mandatory for any business with more than 25 employees. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a good start. It's not perfect,
Yeah.
but it's a good start.
It's much better than it is now.
Yeah.
I think there's a job, a market to get rid of gnats, but anybody else have any questions?
There's an issue on the Columbus ballot this August
Yeah.
for ward representation. Can you make any comments on that? I'm hearing nothing about it really, other than it's going to be.
I moved into the city a couple years ago. I was in the burbs for a while, and so I'm paying attention to it. I think ward representation can have a place, but I'm not voting on anything for anything unless I know how the wards will be divided. I live in Marion Village. I'm just south of German Village. So will I be with German Village in the new wards? Will I be with the South Side in the new wards? I don't know. And I live in a neighborhood with a lot of property crime, and I would like people who have the same issues that I have to be lumped together on one hand. On the other hand, given all the money that's in German Village, I'm thinking maybe if we were lumped in with them, we would get a little more attention from the city. So I think you're going to see this come back. I think this one will lose. And I think people will do what they did with the marijuana issue. They're going to say, okay, people want this, let's figure out how to do it in a more reasonable and productive way. Thank you guys for coming. Sam has the petition. I'm hoping you'll sign it and write those letters to the editor.
This is our petition. We'd love for you guys to sign up.